Thanks everybody for coming, and I think we should get right into it. I want to thank Tim, Jeff, and Murph for spending some time with us tonight. I feel strongly in exposing our alums to our current players to share information on not only what they're doing right now, but also how they got there. And this happens to be, the industry that they're in I think is a little mysterious to not the participation in the games part, but just, the business model, the revenue piece, the influencers, who are the customers, all of that stuff is super interesting. And, each of them has already done 3 or 4 things in their professional career, before they hit the age of 30. I don't think that says anything about them and their allegiance to the companies that they were at the time. I think a lot of it has to do with experimentation and exploration and trying to find this intersection of creativity and earning a living and inspiration and creativity, all of those things that you don't always find in maybe a traditional finance position. So I think I'll let these guys introduce themselves and talk a little bit about kind of what they're doing right now, and then we'll go from there. So I don't know, Jeff, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I could start. First, thanks for having me, Coach Byrne. I think it's definitely a testament to, the Harvard lacrosse community that you're doing this. I think this is a great thing to connect, players with alums, get people, learning about new industries and kind of learning about different career paths. I think, when I was in college, this is something we kind of had to do on our own. And players took it upon themselves, but I think it's great that you're doing this so thanks for having us. I'm Jeff Cohen, graduated 2012. I work at a company called eSports Entertainment Group. We're publicly listed on the NASDAQ, ticker GMBL. We do kind of a number of things across the esports ecosystem, but primarily focused on tournaments, venues, and gambling. My role there, kind of on the finance side, I'm the VP of Strategy and Investor Relations. So pretty much do everything finance related, dealing with investors. We can get more into the role a little bit later, but happy to turn it over to the other guys.
My name's Timothy Edmonds. I graduated 2018. I currently work for Helix eSports, which is the company that Murph's family started. I was one of the first. I think I was the first official employee of Helix. So since the beginning, and that was in fall of 2018. In the very beginning, I was kind of doing a little bit of everything, running tournaments. I guess I should give a quick background on what Helix is real quick. Helix is a gaming facility. We have 4 or 5 facilities now where we have just about, in our big ones, we have just about 100 top of the line PC gaming computers that run on like perfect dedicated fiber optic internet. And people come in and kind of rent time as if it's a new age arcade. And so from the beginning, since there, I helped set the place up. I was running tournaments, setting up leagues, doing like recreation outreach, just running the store. So pretty much doing just a little bit about everything there. Things have changed kind of, been running a little bit of online tournaments since quarantine started. So my role has been shifting, but it's been just an awesome time. And I look forward to the future with the company.
Vandervelde, I don't think Tim did himself justice enough with his description. He's absolutely critical to our operation. So just for the sake of, I have a day job, and then I have Helix, which I'm the co-founder of with my family. And the only reason I mention that is I've been at the company since I graduated from school. It's called Turbonomic. It's an enterprise software company, but the CEO of the company is also a Harvard lacrosse grad named Ben Nye. He's a huge Boston-based VC who now is our CEO. So without Harvard lacrosse, I don't think I'd have a job on either end of this arrangement. But Tim is absolutely critical because seeing as I can only really dedicate nights, weekends, and any available hours that I have to Helix, he's really filled the void working with my family, my little brother, Jack, my other co-founder, and even Big Murph, who's my father, who's another one of the key players in the whole Helix eSports thing, as well as the rest of the team. But I'm just lucky enough that I get to sit between Jeff over at eSports Entertainment Group and Tim at Helix. But yeah, just thank you guys for having us.
Can you talk about kind of revenue, customers, influencers, and then maybe Jeff talk about kind of the financing and maybe the adult side with the gambling piece?
When you look at, and all of us being traditional sports background, there's a very clear path to what I'll call pro. For lacrosse, obviously pro is not as heavy, but for hockey, for football, for basketball, the path to pro is really clear. It's not easy, but at each rung, you can know what you need to do. There's youth, there's club, there's high school, there's AAU, and then there's collegiate, and then there's pro. And so all this amateur infrastructure at the beginning of sports, think 100 years ago, fueled the demand for and a need for professional sports. And that's sort of where you got to. With eSports, if you look at the evolution of the competitive scene, all the money's stuck at the top 0.01%. And there's very little infrastructure underneath it. And so when we looked at, I've grown up playing a game where I played competitively in high school, and then obviously I had to choose to focus on lacrosse in college, so I wasn't able to play as much. But one of the things that bugged my brother and I the most was it was so murky to go from your basement to the next level. There was not a stepping stone. There wasn't a local playing field. It was either your basement or a 50,000 person arena in Korea. And so when we set out to build Helix and get into the space, it was really to service the 99% of people who aren't going to go play in the League of Legends final in front of 100,000 people in Korea. It's fits two real niches. One, it's going to fit the competitive scene. We really want to build out the infrastructure underneath the professional scene, which is receiving tons and tons and tons of money, but underneath it's not. And so that's what Tim's been crucial. And Tim actually built the largest land base. So in one physical center, not online, high school esports league in the entire country at our New Jersey location. We had over 350 players from 8 schools, 5 games, all endorsed from the superintendent down, coming in and playing 5 days a week. Similar like we played lacrosse, school funded, varsity programs. It was unbelievable. But so when you think about, we want to build the youth leagues, the academy systems underneath the professional scene, but also to your point, Jerry, about the idea of going to the arcade. There's no place for gamers to be social. Everyone kind of makes fun of gamers and say they're not social, and they're always in their basement. That's the only place they can do it. They don't have access. There's not places where you go where there's this much gear. And in South Korea, these LAN is local area network LAN centers are very popular. And in the US, they're starting to become more popular. So what we decided to do is sort of mix the functionality of a LAN center with an entertainment concept to really make this a destination where people can come and be social and have a social hub, but also have that building a transparent amateur to pro pipeline. But I think
so. There's kind of a multiple revenue source for you guys there. You guys selling apparel and food, and I don't play any of these games, but consoles and all the different things that go with it.
Yeah, so it's a great. So our primary lines of revenue are going to be food and beverage is huge. So I kind of like to think about a comparable. It's a little bit more digestible. Is Topgolf. There are driving ranges, which are going to be the smaller, more land centers in the U.S. that are 30 stations, just kind of functional. You go practice, you go hit, and then you have Topgolf, where there's proprietary software. It's a higher end experience. We're trying to model after that Topgolf type feel, where you come and it's something you can't do at home. And I think that's the most important piece. But there's food and beverage is a big revenue stream. There's game time, so purchasing, you rent hours to play on the PCs. There's merchandise, there's tournaments in the competition. So our leagues and our tournaments have entry fees to higher prize pools, anywhere from $1,500 to $10,000 of the prize pools at our centers. And then another interesting piece is what we call boot camps. And these are as esports organizations and esports leagues for different titles. So League of Legends or Overwatch or Valorant, some of the larger Fortnite, some of the larger tournaments, they are moving to a more regional model to try to model after sports and have city-based organizations, or a PLL type feel where it's circuit-based and it goes around city to city to city. And as these teams move around, there's not dedicated practice facilities. So a large piece of our revenue actually comes from teams that are in the New York City metro, that are in the Boston metro, that are actually boot camping at our facilities for months, weeks at a time, just so they have an actual practice facility as they're on the road. And so I think one of the coolest things that sort of put us on the map was the Fortnite World Cup. Was the over the top $3 million was to the winner. We had about 97 of the professionals out of the 120 at our center in New York, all practicing before the largest event. But those are the main revenue streams for us. And I think we're looking at alternative revenue streams as we move forward with Jeff's group into how, for the right audience, do we enable peer-to-peer wagering. So people are playing online for money, and it's kind of a black market. It's really murky. It's a lot of fraud. It's fraud with peril. And so the idea would be to leverage centers for ID verification, for the rest, and just so you know who's playing, and for quality control of gear. And so that's kind of an emerging revenue stream. But it's on the horizon. But I think I've done a bunch of talking. Maybe Jeff, Tim, jump in. What did I miss?
Besides the gambling and the engagement that goes from that, what are the other? Is that enough of a revenue stream, or are you guys looking at other ways to engage with and pull in new customers?
That's a big piece of it. I mean, we monetize. So just to take a step back, the company that I joined back in July, eSports Entertainment Group, is actually acquiring, in the process of acquiring Murph's company, Helix, along with another company that Murph's family is invested in, GG Circuit. And that was actually, when I first joined, I had previously been an analyst, on the sell side at a firm called Stevens Inc., and was covering the gaming space. So, I had gotten to know what Murph was building at Helix, and what they were doing with GG Circuit. So one of the first things I did when I actually joined this new firm was kind of hook back up with Murph. And it sort of shows you the value of the Harvard network and the connections, because that was, I think it's funny enough, like literally the second or third day I started it, I may have posted something on LinkedIn. Murph, hit me up, congratulated me, and we had a call. And maybe a week or two later, our two companies were having a conversation about an acquisition, which is, it's kind of crazy how that happens.
How is, your company looking at growth, future revenue, higher engagement, all of that?
Yeah, so we're doing that similar. So we monetize a couple of ways. I mean, we have the tournaments, we have the centers, obviously through Helix, and then, like you mentioned, gambling. So we have a platform called BuyGG that we're actually in the process of getting authorized by the New Jersey Gaming Commission. So we're going to be the first eSports dedicated gambling platform here in the U.S., which we think is a pretty big monetization opportunity. One of the problems that the eSports space in general has had is that historically there's been a ton of eyeballs. I think there's reports saying there's something around 500 million eSports fans worldwide, but monetization per eyeball has really lagged behind traditional sports. I think it's something in the low single-digit dollars versus something, if you look at NFL or MLB, it's like $50, $60. We think gambling is going to be a big piece of that catch-up opportunity towards traditional sports, in addition to some other stuff like media rights, selling, streaming, advertising, stuff like that.
To add what on those guys both said, I would say a massive aspect of esports and gaming in general is live streaming gameplay. So every tournament we run, we live stream it on Twitch. And obviously, if you've done any research on the esports industry, there are gamers who will go on and live stream themselves playing, and they make a wild amount of money. Some of them just streaming themselves doing gameplay. So in our situation, we run a tournament and we can sell signage and etc. For our live stream. So we'll run like an Apex or a Fortnite or a Super Smash, any of these games. We'll run a tournament and we can sell signage like on the actual Twitch stream. So you'll go on, you'll watch our tournament. We'll have two casters, just as if it's an NFL game and they're calling the game. They're calling the match, and then in the corners you'll see advertising all along that. So that's definitely another aspect of the gaming, the whole streaming and up on Twitch and on YouTube and all those streaming platforms nowadays.
But I read an article in the New York Times Magazine. It might be 2 years old. It was about is it 100 Thieves? Is that like a group of these guys, this kind of a gamers collective? And they were talking about kind of the contrast between the lifestyle part of it, kind of maybe individual guys who might be affiliated with a group like 100 Thieves, and then the professional teams that even some NFL and NBA guys and rappers are investing in. Can you guys talk about those kind of the two parts of that world?
Yeah, I think let me take a stab at it. And so I think the easiest way for me to think about it is if you look at the streamers versus the competitive gamers that all kind of go under what they're calling them organizations or orgs for short. And 100 Thieves is one of the more successful ones. They have two sides. They have what they're calling their content creators, to your point, the more lifestyle folks, and then they'll have their teams. I kind of like to think about it like Kevin Hart versus Daniel Day-Lewis. Daniel Day-Lewis isn't going out there. He's a method actor. He's only there to go out and win an Oscar. So he's performing, competing. He doesn't care about eyeballs necessarily. He's doing his craft and he wants to be the best. But Kevin Hart will do anything to get any eyeballs anywhere. And again, they're both wildly successful in what they're trying to do. It's just two different goals. And so Kevin Hart's all about eyeballs and just gross money in. And that's kind of what you think. You look at Ninja, or 100 Thieves has a guy named Jack Dunlop, or his name's Courage. Like, these guys are just going out there and creating as much content as possible. They're not always good at the game. They're more entertaining, kind of like Kevin Hart. He's not a great actor. He's just entertaining. And then you have the competitive players who are like Daniel Day-Lewis, who are going to be out there really just trying to hone their craft. They're not necessarily going out there trying to create as much content as possible, but go out there and compete and make as much good content as they can. But I think that's kind of the delineation that is drawn. And I think it's sort of right now, there's more money to be made being a content creator, just because the industry is new, and Twitch, which is owned by Amazon now, is really incentivizing people to be creating their own content on Twitch. And the sponsorship sales there are huge. The subscriptions from fans watching their favorite streamers is huge. But I think you'll start to see that team revenue pick up, and you'll start to see the players, the competitive players, make more money than at least catch up and have there be parity. There's a Counter-Strike player the other day that just signed a 3-year deal for $1.5 million. So he's getting paid $500,000 a year in salary plus his tournament winnings. And there's League of Legends players that make well over $2 million a year. So like the top echelon of competitive esports is the pay is unbelievable. The issue is that there's less stratification of what's legit. And when I say that, there's really only 4 major pro leagues in the US. So you kind of know there's just so many games, and there's so many leagues, and there's so many different spin-offs of where it becomes very difficult to understand like where the top tier talent actually lives. But to Jeff's point, it's really in Overwatch, it's in League of Legends, it's in Counter-Strike, it's in Call of Duty, and a new Fortnite and Valorant are probably the 6 games where the most money's made. And then you think about, but these guys are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in salary alone, plus prizing.
Let's shift a little bit. Can you guys talk a little bit, maybe take a turn, talk about your, kind of your academic experience, your concentration at Harvard, and then kind of segue into your internships and where you started your professional career when you graduated.
So I was a government major at Harvard. I think one of the beautiful things about Harvard, being a liberal arts school, you get to take classes and things you're passionate about. You don't necessarily have to come to campus day one. And if you go to a school like Wharton, you're sitting in finance classes, and it's almost like you start your job freshman year of college. At Harvard, you get to explore things you're interested in, learn what you like, what you don't. That's kind of how I ended up becoming a gov major. I was interested in politics. I liked current events. I remember freshman year, I took some classes, in that concentration that I was interested in. And that's kind of just how I, ended up being a government major. Turned out, when I graduated, I ended up going into finance and sort of gotten into the eSports and gaming world through finance. I interned and then did my first job out of college at Barclays, where I was a sales trader, and then actually went back to business school at Columbia to kind of get my MBA and get a lot of those things that I mentioned you don't get at Harvard, kind of the accounting, the finance, stuff like that. But I think there's value in doing that, if that's what you want to do later in life, or maybe, what you're looking for at that point. So I think that was valuable. After my MBA, I ended up working in research, like I mentioned before, at a firm called Stevens Inc., where I covered the gaming space, and then had the opportunity to transition over to the industry.
Is that when you were covering that category, do people sometimes make that transition?
Yeah,
So
in equity research, that's definitely one of
the
exit. That's definitely one of the exit passes, kind of to go to, either a company you're covering. I didn't cover the company I joined, but go to a company you're covering or something in the industry that you're covering, because when you're an analyst, you really do become sort of like a sector expert and very knowledgeable in the space. So that's an easy transition. Other transitions from research would be, maybe to investment banking, to the buy side, so to an asset manager or a hedge fund or something like that.
So I started out as an economics major. Then I took Ec 10 with ManQ, and I was like, okay, got another thing coming. So I swapped over to government.
I think that's
after that ManQ Ec 10 class.
In the major.
Well, congrats. Not all these guys know what you're talking about. Is that a class or is that a professor?
It's a class. ManQ was a professor, but the guy writes all the textbooks, so he is dialed in. And it was I had a tough time, so I swapped over to government, which I knew very little about. So I figured I would go for that. which ended up being great. And a lot of my teammates were in it too, so I learned a lot from them, which was awesome. But my sophomore year, I got an internship with Cantor Fitzgerald in New York City, working with global gaming asset management. And when I was there, they had me researching the esports industry, researching whether or not it'd be profitable to have like an esports arena in their casinos. So I was doing a ton of research about gaming. That's when I learned about Twitch and live streaming. And I've been a gamer my whole life. I've always loved video games. I have two younger brothers. They love them equally. So it was just always a point of some serious competition between us. So it's just a passion of mine. And then that fueled with all this research I was doing and all this, I saw the success that the esports industry was having. And pretty much right then, I knew that that's something I wanted to do. Fast forward 2 years later, after I graduated, that whole summer, I pretty much just stayed home trying to looking for jobs, but was struggling because a lot of these companies were looking for somebody with experience in the industry already, and that I had none. I had a lot of passion, but I had no experience. And that led me to a phone call to Willie Walker, who was 2 years ahead of me at Harvard, just because I figured Willie knows a lot of guys. He knows a lot of stuff going on. So I gave him a call, and then he was like, I'm pretty sure Murph's family is doing something in that space. And so that connected me with Mr. Vandervelde, Murph's dad. I ended up meeting with him while they were doing construction on the Helix Center in North Bergen, New Jersey. So I didn't have a gig then. But then towards the end of the fall, I was like, all right, I'm gonna get. So I went and applied to a lot of just intro like tech sales jobs as like a BDR, and I got an offer there. But as soon as I got that offer, I saw a job listing for like a cashier job for the New York Excelsior, which is an Overwatch League professional team, at their pop-up shop in Brooklyn, just working as a cashier. But I figured if I got there, I could get my foot in the door and maybe something can happen from there. And I knew that it was an area I was passionate about. So I turned down the other job. I took the cashier job. I met a woman who ran he was a VP of merchandising for them, and she was awesome. And then on the first night of the pop-up shop, Murph and Murph's dad and Jack walk in, and they're like, "Oh, no way!" Like, saw me as a cashier, and they're like, "Oh, no way!" Like, and then the next week, I got a text from Murph, and he asked me if I wanted to come help them set the place up, and I've been there since then.
No, I think that's a great story on so many levels. But you figure it out, and I think this is a good lesson for our current players, that if you have a passion and a curiosity around something, there's no job too small.
Right.
I mean, Marlon Brando, a famous actor, said there's no small roles, just small actors. Is that you said, it's like, there's probably, of the 50 greatest movie directors of all time, probably half of them started in the mailroom.
That's what I said. That when I was reaching out to those guys, to the companies I was trying to get intro jobs for, that's what I said in every my email. I was like, I have no experience, but if you need me to clean the bathroom for you, I will clean the bathroom for you. And then fast forward X amount of months later, I'm closing shop at Helix, cleaning the bathroom. So it was just a riot.
Which we all have the pleasure of doing. That's
which we all had the pleasure of doing.
That's humbling. Yeah, it's humbling, but it's also fun. Sorry to be to cut you off.
No,
very fun.
No, that's such a great story from our guys, Tim, because I think you don't have to know. You don't have to worry about the end piece. People get caught up in how much money they're making, what their title is. And some of the most successful businessmen and women of the last 100 years of American capitalism started at the lowest rung, and they learned the business from the bathroom up, holding a broom and a mop, and
the bathroom
when as you've progressed through the success that you've had with the company, you're never going to forget that perspective, because you'll have an appreciation for everybody who's contributing to the success of your operation. So that's super cool.
So unlike the two guys that finished in Gov, I started in Gov, ended up being a psych major. And so I went through and I finished as a psych major or a psych concentrator. And similar to Tim, I think when I was looking, I was thinking I wanted to go the traditional route, look into investment banking, which I wasn't qualified for, but still wanted to take a shot at it. But I ended up taking, for what I thought would be an interview prep. I got reached out as an SDR to a tech company in Boston from someone I knew that I played lacrosse with. His sister reached out. So I was like, hey, you want to know what? I'll go in, get some prep, see how it goes, just use this. And then On the way out the door, I end up talking they're showing me out, and the CEO happens to walk by. And Layla was nice enough to introduce me. I candidly didn't even do enough research on the company to understand the CEO was a Harvard lacrosse guy. It wasn't that well written on his bio. So we introduced each other. All of a sudden, we kind of hits there. And then all of a sudden, he's like, hey, come in and be an SDR. And so this is the company Turbonomic. So I've been at Turbonomic. So
what's an SDR for the layman on the call?
Sales development reps. So it is cold calling. It's, again, about as humbling of a position. So all my friends went off high-flying investment banking, private equity jobs. And I was calling IT nerds in the basements of their data centers in Omaha, Nebraska, being told to shut up 100 times a day. And so lo and behold there, I've gone through a bunch of different positions. I've worked in product marketing. And just kind of became an expert on our cloud products. I started our partnerships with Amazon and Microsoft, their cloud services. And now I run the relationship with Cisco, which is one of our larger partnerships. But I've always had the entrepreneurial itch. So I had a couple of smaller companies in high school, just my little brother and I, just odd jobs, an online kind of eBay for lacrosse gear as well back in the day. And we had an opportunity in early 2018 to really take a look at a space that we had seen. And we're like, hey, we want to do this. We want to do something fun with esports. And so we ended up thinking about an esports venue just for events. And then we're like, this business makes no sense if you have people in once a month. So how do you program this thing 7 days a week and make it a LAN center, but larger? And so during my nights and weekends, I spend time. So, I mean, Jack's my little brother, and Tim are really the engines that make this thing run along with the rest of the team. I'm lucky enough where I get to bring some of the passion, whatever little expertise I've gleaned for the rest of my career at Turbonomic into the business around the marketing partnership sides. But we have an unbelievable team of people that are now taking Helix to the next level. You think we're at 5 centers in 2 years. We've got a center with a charity in Boston called The Base. It's an AAU program that helps inner city. It's an AAU program for inner city kids in basketball and baseball. We're adding an eSports element too. So it's just really fun to watch the evolution. And I think just what I've learned from all this is sort of similar to Tim. There's a conventional route, and it's an effective route, but at the same time, don't be afraid to challenge that convention a little bit. And Ben Nye, the CEO of Turbonomic, my other company that I had my day job, he's what inspired me to go work for him. So go find somebody that you want to run through a wall for, and they'll end up taking care of you. If you do a good job for them, it pays off in spades down the road. And I think building equity in something early on is better than taking a big salary day one. That's my opinion on something. But building something that you get to build and building something that you get to own, or a portion of it, and getting in when it's early is something that I've learned is a huge way to develop value at a young age.
Is that something that you wish you would have done more or better as far as kind of sampling different things at Harvard?
My perspective is, like, especially as once you're 2 years out of school, you really stop looking at what you did in college, I guess. So it's important to get once you're out of school. But I think, like, when I go to interview someone, whether it be for Helix or for my other job, I look at how they think. And I think approaching how someone thinks is less. And again, like, obviously psychology, it allows you to kind of approach how people think, but at the same time, econ is probably applicable in the finance. It is in the finance field, but at the same time, you're not going to be running into the posits and the theories. Again, there's a lot of stuff that you're going to learn there is not going to translate over to the work, but it's more how you approach problems and how you think. And I think that's the most important. That's what I took away from school is liberal arts allows you to go approach a lot of different problems as opposed to being pigeonholed into one specific study set. Go approach learning how, again, the planetary sciences course that we took. I had no idea, and I was still terrible at it, but like it teaches you how to think about different problems completely from a different angle. And I think that's a huge piece about if you're thrown an assignment at work that you have absolutely no idea about, you're not going to fall back on your econ concentration and be like, oh, I got this because I studied econ. It's no, I learned how to think about things, and this is how I'm going to approach, first of all, ramping myself up on this particular topic, and then, okay, how am I going to take down the work? I think it's more about how you approach problems than the end result necessarily, at least at school.
Great. We appreciate it. We're doing everything we can for you guys. We know how much you want Harvard to be great. And I can tell you, Coach, between Coach Bergman and Coach Hutchinson, Coach Corrigan, Coach Kyle, myself, there's not a minute that goes by in each day where we're not doing things that, the pandemic has really just been another way for us to differentiate ourselves. And we really appreciate you spending this hour, crazy valuable, really interesting, and thanks for doing it. We appreciate it.